Welcome back to my round 7 game from the Fujairah Blitz Tournament. This one I'm playing a good friend of mine, Irene Sukandar from Indonesia. She is a fellow IM, and we're actually former teammates. We both studied at Webster University back from 2015 through 2017 under the coaching of Susan Polgar. And coming into this game, I really wanted to win. I'm coming off 2 losses in a row. So against Irene, we both know each other's repertoires. So even before the game began, I was trying to determine what to play. And there was a brief pause before things get going, but we shake hands. And she plays pawn e4. That was no surprise. And I play pawn e5 with intention to play this move bishop c5. And this is not a Stafford Gambit, but this is known as a Busch-Gass Gambit. And it's an opening that I became aware of not too long ago. There's another creator on YouTube, William Grafe, FIDE Master, who has a lot of content around this opening. But to my disappointment, Irene does not accept my gambit. She just goes for a pretty mainstream Italian. And now I'm left trying to figure out, is there any way to avoid going into an Italian, or do I just have to play normally? I end up just playing the classic move, pawn d6, and we fully transposed into what will be an Italian game. Now, she plays c3, and we're in a pretty well-known position. I play pawn a6, and we're both taking time here because I don't think this opening is part of either of our repertoires. Usually, at least in more serious games, I like to play the Sicilian, and I'm pretty sure Irene likes to play Spanish most often. So she plays pawn a4, which is a very typical move in the structure, just looking to gain space on the queen side. And with the move pawn a6 I played previously, this gives my bishop room to move back. And I played bishop a7 right away. This might seem like a slow move, maybe not the most productive move, but it's basically ensuring that if white ever plays b4 or d4, then white's not actually getting tempo on the bishop. So we're still in the early stages of the game. She castles kingside, and now I'm trying to figure out the best path to development. I start with knight c6. And one reason for delaying castling here is if she plays bishop g5, I can sometimes look to expand with h6 and g5. But instead she plays bishop e3, and I castle, and this leaves a tension between the bishops. And now, yeah, it's somewhat of a staring contest, but she takes on a7. I take with rook, and she plays knight b to d2. So my rook is a little bit misplaced on a7, slightly atypical square. Like usually the rook should be on the back rank, so eventually the rooks can be connected. But it's not the worst thing ever. And from here, I go for knight to e7. And this is a very typical plan for black against Italian. I'm basically looking to maneuver the knight to the king side. Ideally, I want to play knight g6 and then maybe have attacking potential later in the middle game with possibilities of knight f4. At the same time, I'm also getting out of the way of my c-pawn, and there's ideas for black of playing c6 and later pawn to d5. So knight e7, it's a very nice multi-purpose move. And even though I wasn't so theoretically booked up, I still had a basic idea of what black should be doing in the position. Now, I do want to note here that Irene has been taking a lot of time in the opening. She plays pawn to d4, but it is nice getting the early time advantage. I respond with knight to g6, simply reinforcing the pawn on e5. And even though white's achieved the 2 pawns in the center on e4 and d4, the position is very solid for black. I'm not so scared if white gains space with pawn d5. My minor pieces all have pretty good squares in the position. So again, she takes some time, and I'm already up almost 2 minutes on the clock. And it is a question like what white should be doing here, because both sides are very solid, and sometimes in positions like this, it can be hard to formulate a clear plan. We can see Irene fidgets a little bit in her chair. And this is a difference between over the board chess and online chess. Over the board, of course, you can see your opponent. You can see if maybe they're giving off expressions of being slightly uncomfortable. So, yeah, I was feeling very good. Irene hesitates there for a moment and then takes my pawn on e5. Now, I do have two possible recaptures, but I choose what I think is a more solid one. Pawn takes e5, and then she plays queen to e2. So the structure here is pretty symmetrical. With pawns on e4 and e5, neither of us can really claim a space advantage. And going forward from here, I was trying to figure out the best way to proceed. I started with rook a8. I thought this is a move that I'm going to play eventually, so why not play it right away and stay flexible? And yeah, she's getting a bit lower in time, so she quickly plays queen to e3. And this is a very reasonable square for the white queen. I didn't really want to play knight g4 to attack it, because then the queen could go back, and my knight's not that great on g4. So I was really looking for other moves to keep improving the position. And I start with queen to e7. So there's definitely a feel of symmetry here with both of us putting queens on e-file. But I felt like black should be maybe slightly for choice, with my knights a bit better placed on the king side, and white's knight on d2 maybe not having the best square in the position. So again, she takes a bit of time, and I wasn't actually sure what to expect here. Like maybe white is ready to put a rook on d1, but she had other ideas, and she plays this very ambitious move, queen to g5. And this definitely exerts some pressure on the king side and also against my pawn on e5. And this move comes with a slightly funny trap that if I play pawn h6 to try and chase white's queen away, that would leave my knight on g6 undefended and allow queen takes g6. Very important to keep in mind here that the bishop on c4 pins my f-pawn to my king. So h6 is definitely not the move I'd go for. And I'm trying to figure out if there's a way to exploit white's queen on g5. But I do hesitate a bit. And at this point, I'm trying to make use of my time advantage. So I definitely had some candidate moves in mind, improving my rooks, like rook d8, or developing my bishop, bishop e6, or bishop g4. So moments like this where I have a lot of options, it usually makes sense to take some time to figure out the best path forward. So I end up going for rook to e8, which I think is a very solid move, even though I'm not putting my rook on the open d-file. I'm very simply over-defending my e-pawn, just so my queen and knight on g6 are not tied down. And she very quickly plays knight to h4, I respond with knight f4, and then she plays knight f5. And at this point, we're blitzing out. I take the knight on f5, and this is leading to a pretty big transformation in the position. Her queen is now a bit stuck in my territory, and she takes back on f5 with a pawn. And I'm very happy with this transformation, given that my knights and rooks are now on very good squares. Play rook a d8. She responds with rook a to d1. And at this point, I feel like I'm in very, very good control. Just the pieces are happy. If I want, I could play h6 to kick around white's queen, but I go for the move queen to c5, which in the moment I thought is a very useful move. I'm pressuring the bishop on c4. I'm threatening the tactic of rook takes d2 to remove the defender of the bishop, and then hopefully later be able to take the bishop on c4. But when I played this move, I completely missed her response, and she finds the best response, knight to e4. And this move coming on the board felt like a cold shower because, I mean, it just does so many things at once. Even though it's leaving the bishop hanging on c4, if I take it, then she'll take my knight on f6, my g-pawn would be pinned, my king and rook would be forked, so the bishop on c4 is untakeable. And meanwhile, my queen and my knight are attacked, And I can't really get away with taking her knight on e4 as much as I want to, because then that would leave my rook on d8 as a target, and knight takes e4 would walk into rook takes d8, and then I have back rank issues. And I spent some time here trying to calculate these lines and see if there's any way for them to work for black, but ultimately I concluded that I can't take the knight, I can't take the bishop, and I have to find another option in the position. And my other options are really not that exciting. Of course, my queen is attacked. I'm going to have to move it. And the moves I was considering here were queen e7 or queen c6, just some retreating moves. So I do hesitate a decent amount, and I play queen to c6, defending f6, and then we trade pretty much everything on f6, and then she plays pawn to g3, attacking my knight on f4. And I foresaw this position coming when I played queen c6, and now I'm left with a decision to make where to put my knight. I can either play knight h3 or knight h5, but both moves really don't look that appetizing to put my knight on the edge of the board. I go for knight to h3, and after king g2, I play knight to g5, trying to maneuver the knight to the center. I really want to play knight e4 and eventually knight to d6, but she plays rook e1, very nice prophylactic move, basically preventing knight e4. I was trying to figure out if I can take on d1 and still play knight e4, but I really did not want to concede the d-file. And meanwhile, she is threatening to trap my knight with pawn h4. So I had to figure out how to save my knight. And I play h6 with the idea that after h4, I have this somewhat ugly but safe square on h7 for the knight. But here it's really white who's in very good shape, has the better minor piece. She gains space on the queen side. I maneuver my knight. She plays pawn to b5, trying to induce some weaknesses in my position. I play pawn a5. And now she's just blitzing out her moves, bishop to d5. Very strong square for the bishop. I defend my b pawn with rook b8, and then she slides back to e4. I play rook e7, and even though it feels like I'm on the back foot, at least I've consolidated, and I'm trying to get my pieces to happier squares. I get my knight to c5, attacking the bishop. She defends it while also defending the pawn on a4. And it's white who has full control over the only open file on the board, and now she's trying to make use of it. But I've set up some nice, solid construction, and at this point we're just both very, very low on time, just trying to live on the increment. With king e7, I centralize my king, perhaps preparing rook g8 check, and then she plays a very surprising move, king h5, putting her king on the edge of the board where I can cut it off. And even though my h6 pawn is undefended, white probably doesn't want to take that pawn. She drops back to d2, I play rook to g7, and now I'm trying to figure out, can I have some mating net against her king? And I double up rooks on the g-file, trying to create some idea. Meanwhile, she's just moving back and forth on the d-file. I'm moving back and forth with my rooks, but neither of us can really come up with a plan in the position until she plays this move, rook to e1. Now I'm realizing she wants to play pawn f4, so I'm trying to challenge the d-file. I put my rook on d6, which is a nice way to neutralize the d-file, and she takes on d6, I take back, and now the d-file is no longer open. I actually have the half-open c-file to work with. And after she plays rook d2, I play a terrible move, rook c8, giving away my pawn on h6. I had a brain freeze. I thought rook h8 would be checkmate, but it's not. And now I have to cope with the fact that I lost my h-pawn. And even though I win back the pawn on c3, okay, she first saves her bishop, and it's white's h-pawn, which is a passed pawn, and it's ready to sprint down the board. With h5, she's 3 moves away from queening. I'm trying to find any sort of counterplay in the position, but she keeps pushing the h-pawn. And at this point, I'm realizing that all hope is pretty much lost. White is now controlling the fully open c-file. My rook is super passive. She invades with rook c7. I lose my f7 pawn. And even though I get my knight to g5, it doesn't really help me. She could play h7 here, but instead she takes on f6. hitting my knight. I play knight e4, she plays king g6, and yeah, now there's no way to stop that h-pawn. I'm trying to follow the rule, never resign when you have a knight, but my knight can't really do much in the position. My time is running to 0, and I resign. And we end up laughing after the game because there were a lot of blunders made. Both of us had chances at various moments in this game. So let's hop into analysis and look at all the lessons to take away. Time to analyze this masterpiece of a game. Starting with the opening. Yeah, this is not an opening I play so often, especially OTB, but even on stream. Busch-Gass Gambit. I don't think I want to go down the rabbit hole of this opening, but I'll just share a few of the main points. If white takes on e5, which is the best move, it should be played at an IM level, attempting to just refute this this gambit. The idea is to play knight c6 and get some version of a Stafford gambit, where if takes, takes. It's very similar to Stafford, but rather than having my knight here, my bishop is developed first. There's a lot of lines that can transpose. And what happened in the game with Irene playing bishop c4 and then knight f6, I gave her the chance to take the pawn on e5 yet again. And if she were to play this move, the engine says white's like much better here, but the move I was going to play is knight to c6. And if you want to learn more about this funny, aggressive, highly dubious line, you can check out the channel of FM William Grafe. He does have a lot of content around this opening. Pretty sure he has a very long video delving into the lines after this and then this. Very similar to a Traxler, which you see from a Two Knights. But yeah, I'll leave a link below if you want to check out his content. But let's get back to what happened in our game, because Irene did not want to mess with any sort of tricky gambits, and she played, yeah, very solidly, pawn d3, and we got into an Italian, and I think everything was like pretty normal through here. The trail on a7, I mean, yeah, it's close to equal, maybe white slightly for choice, but it was nice getting the early time advantage and just employing this maneuver, knight to g6, and I guess the first key moment I want to talk about was when she played queen g5, because this is not the most standard move. Usually white will play something like rook e1 or rook d1. Very often white should maneuver the knight to the king side as well. But with queen g5, of course, she was trying to build a pressure, and just to show if h6, oh no, my knight, because yeah, my f-pawn would be pinned. So I was happy with the response, rook e8. And then when she played knight to h4, both of us actually blitzed out the next few moves. I was anticipating this move when I played rook e8, and white wants to take and then take and then take, again exploiting the pin of the f-pawn. But knight h4 was actually a mistake because it allowed me to play knight f4. And what happened in the game after knight f5 and takes, black is objectively better here up until I played a very bad move, queen c5. And the ironic thing is, when I played this move, I thought I was in full control, and of course just missed her very strong response. So in this position, I would have had to just sense the danger a little bit and not play queen c5 right away. I think the easiest moves to play are either rook d7 or rook d6, preparing the double up on the d file. And this would have just been simple chess. There's only one open file in the position. Why not double up? My rook's not serving a purpose on e8. And if I played this move, then it's not easy for white to find a productive plan here. Of course, g3 walks into knight h3 with the fork, and I just want to double up and pin the knight on the d file. And black is in very, very good shape here. So let's see what happened in the game. After queen c5, she played knight e4. I burned a lot of time. I basically had to go for the line that happened in the game. And yeah, after g3, it is white who's for choice. But then going forward even further, I did manage to stabilize. And I want to zoom through to the moment where she walked her king up, because at this point we were both very low on time. And when she played king h5, I had an idea in mind that maybe I can try and demonstrate. But my idea was to put my rook on h8 and then play rook g5. But this is not actually working because the king can drop back to g4 after taking the rook. So what I was hoping for in this position is if she played g4, then it's actually a very beautiful mating net. I can play rook h8, threatening the mate in 2 with rook g5. So for example, if she plays f3, I was dreaming of a scenario where I can check and then take back with checkmate. Not the most common mating pattern you see every day or common pawn structure. But yeah, she was alert enough not to play g4. And then basically this game was determined by one very careless mistake. Like when I played rook c8, I thought my pawn was untakeable because I had calculated rook h8 checkmate, but it's not checkmate because king g7. And I think it was just time pressure getting to me, not being fully aware of what to do in the position. And what I should have done was just keep defending the pawn and play anything else that doesn't blunder anything. I can't really make much progress, but if I just make some knight move, the position is just very solid, and Engine just says this is equal. It's hard for either side to make much progress here. And I think it would have been likely the game would be a draw, but who knows? Really anything can happen in time pressure. But yeah, of course, after rook c8, I just collapsed pretty quickly, and she converted quite cleanly. So it's a tough game. This was my third loss in a row, which definitely stings, but my spirits were not completely broken. And you will want to stay tuned for the next game. There are 2 more rounds to go in this tournament, and the next game does feature a Stafford Gambit, so stay tuned for that. I'll avoid spoiling anything else. So see you guys soon, and thanks for watching.